I did my CBC project on the American crow and blue jay in Rochester. So the reason I chose the American crow, it is beneficial to ecosystem balance because they are omnivores. They help control population of pests and get rid of carrion, which spreads diseases. They symbolize intelligence, transformation, and adaptability in many Native American communities, and they've been a subject of extensive research for science, and they help us understand animal intelligence. Play a key role in seed dispersing, specifically for oak trees. This helps with forest regeneration. Blue jays are excellent mimics and are able to create sounds of other birds and even humans, and they are able to thrive within various habitats due to their intelligence. That's for the blue jay. For the location, I chose Rochester, New York. Rochester is a key location for the CBC bird count because of its location along the migration routes, as well as it's home to many habitats for birds. Its geographic location makes it a very important wintering area for different types of bird species, as it experiences some harsh winters. So the CBC overview. What is the CBC? The CBC is a public data set of bird observations collected by citizens and scientists over the past 100 years. How's it collected? Volunteers count birds within a 15-mile circle range. They record the species, how many birds they see, and other data that is relevant. Why is the data useful? Data is useful because it allows people to track bird population trends, understand the impacts of climate change, and gain knowledge of the bird populations and species in their areas. As for the NOAA, what is the NOAA? The NOAA is a government agency that tracks the Earth's weather, climate, oceans, and atmosphere. What does it do? The NOAA helps us understand climate trends and how these trends have an effect on our wildlife. And why is this important? This is important because it allows us to help protect our wildlife and understand what effects climate is having on them. Research, question, and hypothesis. My question is there a relationship between the harsh winter temperatures and the amount of blue jays and American crows within the Rochester area? My hypothesis is colder winter weather with snowfall will cause a decrease in the number of blue jays and American crows in Rochester. So for my first graphs, we have the birds per party hour versus count year. For the blue jay graph, we see that its highest point reaches at around 3.7 and its lowest at around 0.3, and the graph doesn't show much consistency. For the American crow, we see that its highest point reaches around 290 and its lowest at around 0, and there also isn't much consistency on this graph. For the bird abundance versus bird type, as seen by the graph, we see that the American crow is a much larger species in this area. Over the past 22 years, the average is around 16,000, while the blue jay is at around 250, and this could mean there may be more data surrounding the crows as they are a more common bird. So bird observations versus bird type. For both birds, we see that over the past 22 years, they have the same number of observations. This highlights that these birds are noticed and consistently seen throughout Rochester, and this is important because it allows us as researchers to have significant data about the number of birds within the area. So the average temperature versus year. Throughout the 22 years, we see a somewhat consistent trend in January. The consistency lies in the fact that it stays under 40 degrees and above 10, which shows some consistency, but that's also a wide range, so it's very moderate. The real reason it's somewhat consistent is because there are no big outliers in the graph. For the precipitation versus max temperature, for the Pearson's correlation coefficient, it is 0.338, and this graph shows us that there is a slight correlation between temperature and precipitation. We see a slight increase in the amount of precipitation as temperature increases, but it is not a great correlation. This suggests that other variables can play a stronger role in determining temperature trends. For the temperature versus snowfall, we see the Pearson's correlation coefficient is 0.359, and as shown on the graph, as the temperature decreases, we do see more snowfall, but the relationship is moderate once we get to a certain temperature, meaning snowfall isn't determined by the temperature alone, and other factors come into play. For the bird abundance versus temperature, Both of these graphs show that there's a weak positive correlation between the number of birds and temperature. As temperature increases, we see it can cause a slight increase in the number of birds, but it is not great enough to be a strong indicator. The inconsistency we see at the higher temperatures and the number of birds emphasizes that the correlation between these two factors isn't strong and that temperature does not have a direct effect on the amount of birds. Unlike the temperature graph, we see on these graphs that there's a weak negative trend in the relationship between snowfall and number of birds. The relationship is still weak, which means it is not a strong indicator. The inconsistency of the data points are similar to the temperature graph, which shows that this variable does not have a direct effect on either of the birds. For my conclusion, both snowfall and temperature have weak trends in affecting bird abundance. The increase/decrease isn't very strong or consistent, meaning the variables don't have strong effects on the number of birds. Snowfall and temperature do not have significant effects on American crows and blue jays, and the data does not support my hypothesis about how weather will affect the abundance of birds, as the graphs and examinations made throughout the project show this. Thank you.